On today's episode of Refashioned, we're talking about Jeff Bezos lighting the Met Gala on fire, Vogue's attempt to crawl back from the grave since the last episode, more examples of cigarettes creeping into fashion because you guys simply won't stop finding them and sending them to me, and as always, the interesting and weird TikToks that I've found since we last spoke. So let's get into it. Before we do, hi, welcome to all the new subs. I'm so happy you guys are here. We just reached 60k on the channel, which is insane to me. So thank you all so much. And thank you to the guys who've been here from the beginning. If you're brand new here, then hi, welcome to Refashioned, the podcast I do where we talk about recent fashion discourse and chronically online takes, what you guys have been sending me, as well as random things that I find online that I think are interesting. Make sure to follow along and subscribe to whatever platform you're listening or watching this on, and let's get into it. Guys, I have so much to tell you about, but first I have to tell you, I went to a Twilight rave at the weekend and it was amazing. It was in this warehouse in Camden and there was an absolute massive mix of people there, and they would just play iconic clips from the movies followed by a beat drop, and it was just insane. People with Jacob masks on were dancing their hearts out to Supermassive Black Hole. The amount of girls I saw with digicams was really, really interesting, and we went to a garlic themed bar beforehand to be on brand and had garlic infused shots. Insane and very, very whimsical, so I wanted to share that. Let me know what you got up to this weekend, but I doubt you can beat mine. But yeah, okay, on to the fashion updates. So Vogue is already trying to make up for the Timothée Chalamet cover flop that we spoke about in the last episode, and I think what they've done for December's issue ticks all of the boxes for marketing in 2025 to 2026.
The Vogue diary is back, and I'm gonna go to my local co-op and see if they have it. They've actually come out with two colours, a pink one and a blue one.
Let's unbox it and show you what it looks like. I'm honestly so gassed for this. Look at it, it's so pretty.
I kind of love this diary. I think it's a really cute addition, but like I said, it feels very 2025 marketing gimmicky. And I think we should go through the reasons why. I mean, partnering with an actual artist is an anti-AI check. Going in for the physical media nostalgia trend, check. Doing an analog diary because it's kind of anti-tech, check. Media literacy and kind of art world knowledge being a status symbol, check. Girlhood nostalgia for buying a mag and getting a fun edition in it, check. Also making a limited edition collector's item that will probably become an it girl accessory next year, check. Overall, I think this is a pretty strong comeback for Vogue. Can it make up for the worrying editorials we've seen recently? I'm not quite sure, but I definitely think this banking on nostalgia and limited edition collector's item is a strong move. I think it's really, really interesting, this resurgence we're seeing of physical print media. And I've been seeing a lot of people jumping on the zine trend that's been going on, making their own little magazines and, you know, kind of tying it into like the collage themes that have been happening recently, tying it into like being analog, getting off your phones. I think overall media literacy and reading and hot girls read is going to continue to be a massive theme for 2026. I mean, we've had all of those Dior book bags that have happened, people partnering with book influencers. Like, I can just see this carrying on. I don't see it ending for 2026. And I think this Vogue edition kind of proves that. But I want to know your guys' thoughts. Is this something you would rush out and buy? I don't know if it would be for me. I have to say I kind of was tempted because I do really like the artwork on there, and like the idea that it's a small artist and Vogue is platforming them is really, really nice. But again, it kind of does feel like a little bit of consumerism to bolster Vogue back into people's good books. I don't know. Actually, speaking of 2026 trend predictions for a second, I think the most interesting one I've seen recently is the idea that personal style is going to be entering the gym. And this prediction comes from my friend Grace Robinson, who is here on YouTube. If you're not following her channel, you should be. And she kind of explains where this trend is cropped up from really well.
And so I've noticed recently that personal style is finally entering the gym. And as Susie Lola mentioned in her Autumn Winter 25 trend prediction video, she's starting to see small fashion creators create more kind of unexpected gym fashion looks. In parallel, there is also a new landscape of emerging designers who are also designing within this new intersection. So people like Joanna Parv are creating these more delicate gym pieces. And I'm pretty sure that Brenda Hashtag mentioned on her podcast that she's looking for more fashion forward gym wear, and equally Lauren Sherman chairman on Fashion People, said that the trend of people wearing those utilitarian gym sets is truly over.
I think the crux of it is when Grace says, we're entering this era where our fitness and fashion identities are no longer separate. Like, yes, I can see all the fashion girls are agreeing with this idea. Since Grace's video came out, I've seen so many examples of this online and also in real life, actually. I was in one of my local charity shops the other day and I found a whole rack dedicated to gymwear that was a little bit more vibrant than you would expect. And that's never been there before, as far as I'm concerned. When I've been in there before, gymwear has not had its own rack. Also, I saw the Suze Me's Black Friday ad, which was very nostalgic, very 90s gymwear exercise video coded, which I think is going to be maybe a big part of this trend. I could definitely see that happening and tying in with the nostalgia trend. From a marketing perspective, I could definitely see how this personal style gymwear trend is going to fit right into what they've already been doing, collaborating with sports stars, sponsoring sports events, you know, really trying to get their names into the sports crowd as a way of furthering status symbols and community. It kind of just makes complete sense that one avenue they'll take with this is making more personal style gymwear, maybe partnering with a very fashionable sports person to create a more fun collection than we typically see. And the kind of partnership that enters my mind is Coco Gauff and maybe Miu Miu. I feel like that could be quite a interesting partnership. From a culture point of view, I wonder if this trend is kind of cropped up and fits in with the rejection of the clean girl aesthetic we're seeing recently, and maybe the wellness trend as well, in a kind of paradoxical way. Like, people are moving away from clean girl gym sets, matching gym sets that is kind of done by every single brand and worn by every single gym girl, and instead moving towards something that feels a little bit more personal, a little bit more in keeping with their fashion life too.
Free Will is wearing vintage to work out. We have the Givenchy glasses, Lulu, Bebe Sport, and the best part, my socks say talk Pilates to me.
Honestly, I'm kind of surprised this is only just becoming a trend for a lot of the fashion girlies. But I suppose the matching gym set has dominated with the clean girl aesthetic for so long. I mean, me personally, I'm a baggy t-shirt, shorts girl at the gym. I'm not a matching set girly, never really have been. Everything in my wardrobe for my gym is very mismatched, and I will typically be in my dad's old biking t-shirts. So I kind of feel like I'm a little bit ahead of the curve here, or just lazy. But I can imagine for the true fashion girlies, it's not going to be their dad's old t-shirts. It's going to be vintage sportswear. It's going to be maybe aerobic exercise core. It's going to be maybe a little bit like coquettish and girly gym wear. My friend Phoebe Taylor did a whole video about pole dancing core and how that's kind of becoming a trend and what to wear for that, which I think was really, really interesting and fits into this. I don't know, I think it's one of those trends that actually kind of makes sense to me a little bit. You know, sometimes you get a trend that's just like, where has this come from? Why are we being sold this? It doesn't make any sense to our lives. Versus, I think having fun with gym wear, making it part of your fashion world is just kind of fun. It excites me a little bit more than other trends. So I'd love to know what you guys think. But for me, this is a strong trend prediction. But okay, moving on to, I think, the biggest story that we're going to talk about today, which is Jeff Bezos buying his way into the fashion world and whether it's gone too far now. So if you don't know, it was announced that Jeff Bezos and his wife Lauren are the new sponsors of the Met Gala 2026. They will be sponsoring the gala itself and the exhibit that always accompanies the gala, which, just to be clear, is not the first time that Jeff has been involved in a Met Gala. He funded back in 2013, I think, via Amazon, but this is kind of the first time that Jeff has really stepped into the spotlight with this and brought, obviously, his wife Lauren into the spotlight, and it's caused havoc online. I am very much not for this. I think it's kind of showing that culture is now for sale, and for billionaires who have so much money that they don't know what to do with, it's now no longer enough of a status symbol to have, you know, multiple zeros in your bank account. You have to start buying soft power like culture, like art, like fashion. Now, if this was simply just a case of them sponsoring a one-off Met Gala event, I don't think it would be such a big deal. But 2025 has proved that Jeff and Lauren are very serious about breaking into the fashion industry and being seen as a fashionable couple, being seen as a kind of it couple. in this world. These are the same people that bought themselves a Vogue cover, are rumoured to be buying Condé Nast themselves as a wedding present for Lauren, and I don't know how founded that is. I think the family that owns Condé Nast have said that those rumours aren't true and the publication isn't for sale, but other people are saying it's very much on the cards, and that this Met Gala move and the Vogue cover was kind of a step towards that. But it's also the billionaire couple who collaborated with a fashion designer previously for their spacesuits on their pet project. And I think what's kind of tying all of these things together is, yes, a step into the fashion space, but also massive public flops. The reaction to Jeff sponsoring the Met Gala is exactly what you would have expected online. People just not really here for it. And I've seen a lot of people talking about whether the Met Gala is over now. And I think it's an interesting idea. I mean, this is the first year that Anna is no longer heading Vogue, although she is still involved with the publication and she is still involved with this event. It's not her name on the figurehead at Vogue anymore. And I think that's having a big impact. It's certainly shaking the foundations of who's in charge in fashion. And I've seen a lot of rumors online, kind of involuntarily, about the fact that Lauren is trying to position herself as kind of a new Anna. I don't know. But the theme, I think, is a big crux of this issue and kind of very symbolic of the impact all of this is having. Having the theme be costume art, I don't hate it. I think it could be good, but I can just see how celebrities are going to ignore this and turn up in whatever they want. And part of that is because the theme is so vague, especially after how good last year's was. This just feels like a step back, or like 10 steps back. I also think it's kind of weird how central they've put the idea that this is about Western fashion. I don't know. Am I reading into that? It's just kind of insane having costume art as the theme. That's it. After years of like Sleeping Beauty, reawakening fashion, or camp, notes on fashion, or Heavenly Bodies, fashion and the Catholic imagination. Like, these are themes. These are things that inspire research into the topic. They're things that celebrities would have to probably learn about, or at least have their stylists learn about, in order to be on trend and not be embarrassed on the night. Costume art? I don't think so. I think it's kind of hilarious how beige and vague that is. But I think more importantly to this entire issue, the people who are now reportedly in charge of the Met Gala have such blatant ulterior motives that are outside of fashion. And it feels like the Met Gala is moving away from that central point it once had of funding the art and platforming art to just become a political playground where a billionaire can invite himself and his posse into the fashion world and gain some kind of relevance that way. And yes, okay, maybe we could say that the Met Gala was never truly about the art. It was about who's who in the fashion world and who can turn up in the nicest gown. Sure, it's always been a spectacle. But I would argue that under Anna, it did seem that art was maybe of the second most importance, and raising money to fund the museum is something that she really managed to do well. And now all it is funding Bezos's cultural coup. I mean, according to Vogue, the gala serves as an opportunity for fashion to prove its worth as an art form unto itself. But what are we celebrating in recent years? Amazon Prime fashion and H&M on the stairs. Anyway, people's reaction to this have had me equally giggling and kind of despairing at the situation. Someone pointed something out very interesting about Lauren's arc to kind of make herself a fashion girly. There's been a couple of articles coming out recently that say things like, Lauren Sanchez Bezos brings her best archival deep cut to Paris, with pictures of her wearing archival designer. We know she's been quite a staple at fashion months recently, and basically someone summed it up with, the fact she's been wearing archival fashion has been part of the strategy so that she looks like a fashion girl. It's so true. Also, the fact that this conversation is happening right when the Met employees have petitioned to create a union is so interesting. And I wonder what Jeff is going to have to say about that. Okay, swinging wildly away from that for a second, I think we need to talk about whether we're cooked as a generation. First, the Phoebe Philo shower TikTok, and now this trend, which if you're listening to this rather than watching, I'll explain, as people filming themselves walking back from a night out in what seems to be freezing cold weather and romanticizing that by saying, when it starts getting so cold, you hit the Balenciaga fall winter 25 show walk. But I think it's quite funny, this trend, and the fact that we're turning walking home in the cold into a fashion moment. And I say, like, are we cooked, in a kind of ironic way? I know this is a joke, but the fact that we constantly as a generation romanticize things to the point of exhaustion and brand things as well is, I think, really quite telling about growing up on social media and TikTok. I don't know. It's kind of like the Phoebe Philo shower TikTok. I don't know if I'm looking into this too much, but with that one, it felt like all of you were agreeing with me. So I don't know. Maybe you're all going to agree with me. Maybe you're going to think, okay, she's gone too far. But the good news is that we're actually getting an update on that original TikTok from last episode. And we're going to be finding out whether it was satire or not, because the creator of the TikTok, Emmett, reached out to me and said that a friend of a friend showed him the YouTube video and he's now making a response. So good news, besties, we're having an impact. I actually think this was so funny and I loved getting this message. So whenever that response comes out, we'll be covering it and we'll be getting our answers. Okay, speaking of the last episode, we did an update to the cigarette fashion trend that I covered in a video maybe last month. And we're going to do another update because I just have been getting multiple messages a day since I started covering this. People are just finding examples left and right. And this might be the last update we do because, like, as we've said, we've spoken about this a lot, but we do need to cover these because they get wild. So you have your classic examples that people have been pointing out, like the cigarette crown and Natasha Zinko, which is very in keeping with the one I saw at the Dirty Fashion exhibit and predicted would be on the catwalk somewhere. This is kind of the same vein and I think very, very interesting. You also have the Glossier lighter that so many of you have sent me. Basically a branded lighter that they're apparently selling for their candle collection is I think the marketing line, but people are saying this is not what you'd use to light your candles. And as someone pointed out in my DMs, this is quite jarring from one of the OG clean brands to now be coming for a smoking coated lighter. Also, I'm sorry, I look at it and I just think fingerprints and smudges. If I did smoke, this is not my kind of lighter. But I think some of the most interesting examples I've been sent have been kind of proving the theories we talked about and kind of predicting the ties we're going to be seeing with this trend. And one of the big ones for this is the community trend. Because I don't know if you saw this, but basically there was a whole thing that happened in New York recently with an elderly man handing out flyers, asking people to come smoke with him and thinking maybe a couple of people would show up, but a whole crowd of people showed up just to smoke with this guy. I say it's quite sweet. It's not that I'm romanticizing smoking, thinking smoking is sweet, but I think this kind of attempt to reach out from an older man is really cute. He was offering free cigarettes to people if they RSVP'd, and just like the flyer design itself is really cute. It looks like it was made in paint, and just the fact he was going around and handing them out is really quite wholesome. And I guess the reaction from people is kind of wholesome, like more people wanting to go find this guy and be with him. However, the whole crux of it centering around smoking is it really just does prove that desperation for community thing we talked about with this trend, and how it really will be tied into making friends and romanticizing being with people again. I mean, the comments kind of prove this. Even as a non-smoker, I support this. Community really is everything. This makes me wish I smoked for the culture. I don't know. I don't want to condemn it because it was just an elderly man reaching out. But imagine if he had said something like, come play chess in the park with me instead. Like, I don't think it needs to be centered around smoking. But then again, the loneliness epidemic is hard to demonize. So the second thought that entered my mind after, oh, this old man's so cute, is, do we think this is going to become a brand sponsored event? Because I'm putting my money on this now that it will be. And I'm also going to place bets that a fashion brand is going to maybe bring him to their show. Maybe a brand like Bottega, who has a history of finding internet stars and bringing them out to the show. I don't know, but I'm kind of placing bets on both of these things happening. Or maybe some kind of merch tie-in. I think fashion is going to be all over this in some form. And it kind of ties into a comment I had recently on the channel, which has a really funny opening. But really talks about how this trend fits into the culture right now. I'll read it out. I know now what it felt like when the Library of Alexandria burnt down because I left an essay of a comment on your sigvid and forgot to press send. The general gist was looking at the digitalness and abstract nature of vapes, that you don't have an idea of how much you're smoking and can overconsume easily, versus how cigarettes are seemingly analog in comparison. This isn't to say that they're better or good at all, but that they align with this return to physical media we are seeing these days. I thought that was a really interesting comment and kind of ties into something we're going to talk about in a minute, but totally makes sense and totally fits in with the whole getting off your phone, going outside, finding a community, also going back to classic retro things, nostalgia, cigarettes versus vapes. This is such a good theory in my mind. Speaking of that nostalgia as well, the theme we were talking about, the cigarette box being a big part of this trend, that's just been proved right again and again and again in these examples. And I think the explanation is very clear. Someone else said it in a comment. I'd like to see an influencer try to romanticize UK cigarette packaging, which, if you don't know, is covered in the most disgusting images trying to warn people off, and is probably why when people have been copying the cigarette boxes, they're very much like the retro old packaging that kind of bring back nostalgia, romanticization, and the return to what smoking used to be before it was demonized, I guess. The examples for this are Balenciaga creating a cigarette box for their new perfumes, and also another fragrance brand, Discotheque, doing the same thing. And also kind of in the same vein, but also I think, I hate to say it, but cooler, is a cigarette case that came out from a brand that was modeled after an old iPod. I could, like, the TikTok girlies are gonna love this one. I kind of don't want to platform it because I do kind of think it's too cool and it could influence people, but it got sent to me, so we're going to include it. Smoking is not cool, kids. You don't need this cigarette case. And even if you're desperate to get your hands on it, put something else in there. Hair ties, lipstick, not cigarettes. The final kind of update I want to do on this trend is, I think, really, really interesting. Kind of proves that point we were talking about of how cigarettes have never been out of fashion, but they have been sidelined up until now, and it wasn't something fashion was shouting about up until now. This example someone left on a comment kind of proves that. Basically, they pointed out that a while ago there was a Vogue What's in My Bag video with Kate Moss, and they edited out the part where she took out a packet of cigarettes, even though it was included in the table shot of her contents of her bag later on. And the commenter said, I wonder if Vogue would make that same decision to edit it out today. And I think that's really interesting because I think it's no. Like, they would maybe even put it in the thumbnail. But anyway, last thing I want to talk to you guys about, I don't know if you've seen this. It's kind of been something that's been around on TikTok since summer, but it's ramping up this November. And it's an analogue bag. Do you know about this? I can't tell if it's cute or performative, and I think we need to explain the trend and then we can kind of decide. So if you haven't seen this trend, basically it was started by, I think, one particular influencer who spoke about how she carries around a tote bag of stuff that she can pull out in a coffee shop or when she's waiting for something in real life, so that she doesn't reach for her phone instead. And I think the original creator had things like crossword books and her latest sewing project. And people absolutely flipped for this. And I can definitely see why it fits into all the major themes of social media right now. Getting offline, bettering yourself, having a hobby. And I'm not saying that carrying a crossword book or even just a normal book is a bad thing. I think it's a pretty normal thing. I think it's something a lot of us do. I don't really tend to leave the house without a book most days. A lot of people feel the same. There's a trend going around right now about how you try to match your bag to fit your Kindle. Like, this is not a new thing. It's just a rebranded thing for TikTok. And of course, TikTok is doing what TikTok does with the trend, because the analog bag or the anti-doom scrolling bag is just the extreme version of carrying a book around. And as we know, social media likes its extremes. I think for me, it's when the original creator was pulling stuff out of her bag and she says something like, and then you're the girl watercoloring in the winery. And I think that's the crux of the issue for me about this entire trend, because that's completely perception focused. That's about how you look to other people when you're carrying around these analog things that mean you're not on your phone. And that just feels very performative, which is the issue with social media, right? It's the irony of talking about getting off your phone via a phone app. It's the irony of quitting social media but still posting about quitting social media on social media. It's that issue that we all seem to have now of performing for others all the time and not seemingly be able to draw that line of I'm doing this for me or I'm doing this for the mirror version of me. Not to assume that this creator doesn't obviously find personal gain in watercolouring. I'm sure she enjoys it. I'm sure it does make her feel good. But it's the way she frames it to the people she's talking about online as this is how this will make you look. It goes back to the way we talk to each other on social media and how insidious I think that can be and how powerful I think it can be without us realizing. And there's also the other part of this trend that is just classic TikTok in that it's devolved into consumerism. There have been people who are jumping on and have been purposely buying new bags, and I think there's a specific bag that people are buying called the boat and tote bag. I don't know why this bag has been chosen as the face of the anti-doom scrolling bag, but as you can imagine, people have been saying, I just bought this bag to do an analog bag, or like I need to buy this bag so I can make my analog bag. Like it's not, I'll just grab a random tote that I already own 1,000 of like we all do. It's no, I have to have this specific thing to do this specific thing that really at the crux of it is about anti-consumerism, since being on our phones is all about consumerism. It's just the irony there that I don't really like. And also I guess you have the other part of the consumerism, which is people buying things to put in their bag. And again, it just feels like it's feeding our need for new things disguised as personal growth. I don't know if that's harsh. I don't know if that's just like my jaded outlook of TikTok now. And I don't think like if this does genuinely help people get off their phones and they're happier, then yes, it's a good thing, despite the fact that it's a trend wrapped inherently in consumerism, it feels like. But I think we need to be honest about that fact with ourselves. Especially if you're going to buy something for this bag, you need to be saying, am I buying it because I genuinely want to do it, or because I think it's what should be in an analog bag and I can then show off to other people. That is the end of everything I wanted to share on this episode, everything I've been seeing lately happening in fashion and TikTok. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you leave your thoughts on whatever has sparked your interest in this episode. And if you haven't already, I hope you subscribe to the channel and come say hi to me on my other social medias, because that's always really fun. And actually my Instagram group chat sees a lot of these things first and kind of shapes a lot of these videos. So make sure to join that if you are on Instagram and you want to be part of that little community there. It's always fun. So yeah, I hope you have a lovely day and we speak soon. Bye.